Go ahead.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. So thank you for inviting me here, Ms. Huffman. I certainly appreciate you and providing this opportunity for me to come to the audience and talk a little bit about the Voting Rights Act of 1965. My name is Nishana Kess. I come to you in my personal capacity as a licensed attorney. I also have a master's of science and legal studies, to which I studied government affairs and policy, and I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy. I also, in my daytime job, I am the executive director for the Maryland State Conference of the NAACP, which is a nonpartisan organization. Uh, so I just wanted to jump in there a little bit and talk about the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and kind of break down some of the important points here and where we kind of stand today. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 is a landmark piece of legislation. It's aimed at prohibiting racial discrimination in voting. Some of the key provisions, the sections I kind of want to pull out, Section 2, which prohibits any voting practice or procedure that discriminates on the basis of race, color, or membership in a minority class. Okay, and then I wanted to pull out Section 4B, which contains a formula that determined which jurisdictions were subject to pre-clearance based on their history of discrimination. And Section 5 required jurisdictions with the history of that discrimination to obtain federal approval, a pre-clearance, if you will, before implementing any changes to their voting laws or practices. We will certainly come back to these sections and I'll refer to these sections. And there's certainly something with 4B and Section 5. You'll see that those are kind of past tense language, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Just like legislation, any other legislation, the VRA has been amended, and some of the most recent amendments have greatly impacted how the VRA operates. One of the first amendments was in 1982, which was very beneficial in strengthening Section 2 by establishing that a plaintiff did not need to prove discriminatory intent, only that the action or policy had a discriminatory effect. So just like other acts, this act has an expiration date or had an expiration date. But in 2006, the act was extended for another 25 years. And the reason why I wanted to highlight that is because I want you to keep in mind, this was extended in 2006. It is now 2024. So we have until 2031. It's not that much time from now until then. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about that later in terms of that time aspect. One of the most recent decisions, I'll go to 2013, it significantly weakened the VRA. The decision in Shelby v. Holder declared that 4B, remember I said we were going to go back to that section, 4B's coverage formula was unconstitutional. This was Shelby v. Holder again. That also effectively nullified Section 5. Section 4B, or rather Section 5, kind of bounced off of Section 4B. So although Shelby v. Holder really highlighted the coverage formula in 4B, when it was found unconstitutional, Section 5, the pre-clearance requirement was now obsolete. So the lack of the formula essentially empowers the states to pass laws that could potentially restrict voting rights without those prior approvals. Another recent case that I want to highlight is Brenovic v. DNC. Now, if I'm not saying that name, the Brenovic name right, I'll just spell it for you, B-R-N-O-V-I-C-H, Brenovic v. DC. This case has a very significant impact on Section 2 of the VRA. This case is out of Arizona. It challenged, number one, the out-of-precinct policy that they had. That out-of-precinct policy allowed the state to discard ballots cast in the wrong precinct. So if you were in one jurisdiction, you cast your vote in a different jurisdiction, it allowed Arizona to throw out those ballots. The other one prohibited third parties from collecting and delivering ballots. Some organizations would volunteer to pick up ballots and drop off ballots. So Arizona said no. This was Arizona's law. They said no, that's not allowed. So this case went all the way to the Supreme Court. The court upheld both laws, stating that the out of precinct policy, the burden on voters was minimal, and it did not create a substantial disparity in the opportunity for minority voters to participate in the electoral process. Regarding the ballot collection ban, the court found that the ban was reasonable to prevent potential fraud and did not disproportionately impact minority voters. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the dissent. Justice Kagan, Justice Breyer, and Sotomayor dissented, and they argued that this decision weakens the Voting Rights Act because it makes it more difficult to challenge discriminatory voting laws. They also stated that the laws had a disparate impact on minority voters, and the justifications for the laws that Arizona presented was insufficient to outweigh the harm to voting rights, okay, and essentially to the voters. But the decision to uphold Arizona laws increased the burden for plaintiffs to prove a violation of Section 2, because now they must show that the law not only has a disparate impact on minority voters, but that the impact is substantial and unjustified by state interests. This also grants the states more leeway to implement voting regulations that may have a disparate impact, as long as the regulations can be justified by a legitimate state interest like preventing fraud. And we all know how that could go, because preventing fraud is sort of a general statement, and that is the problem, right? The ruling may lead to an increase in litigation as states kind of navigate and test out the boundaries of what is permissible under this new standard, and it makes the potential for Section 2 violations to be more challenging. So it makes it more difficult for people to challenge the violations. The decision here underscored, an ongoing debate over the balance between preventing voter fraud and ensuring equal access to the ballot for all citizens. Now, on this John Lewis Day, I did want to talk a little bit about his role in the passage of this act. John Lewis, as we know, was a key leader in the civil rights movement, and he played a pivotal role in the events leading up to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Some of us may know, a lot of us know, that in March of 1965, he organized and participated in the March in Selma. It is now known as Bloody Sunday. It drew national attention to the violent suppression of African-American voters, the brutality that was faced by Lewis and all the other marchers. It was widely spread or broadcasted on television. It galvanized public support and spurred legislative action. So directly, this event directly led to the introduction and passing of the Voting Rights Act, and signed by President Johnson. His activism shined a bright light on the systemic racism, and through his work and community organizing, he helped to dismantle institutional barriers to voting and ensure that the civil rights movement continued its upward trajectory. Now, in August of 2021, most recently, the House Representative Terry Sewell and later Senator Lee introduced the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act to supplement the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So now I'm bringing it back from what I talked about earlier when it came to the 25-year extension. So in 2021, there was this introduction of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. So we certainly hope that this passed, but its purpose is to restore protections such as the reinstatement of that pre-clearance we talked about in Section 4B, which will essentially bring back Section 5 to strengthen the legal protections, and And it will also strengthen the legal protections by providing additional tools and clearer standards for challenging voting practices and to increase transparency. So this act will increase transparency and accountability by introducing new measures to ensure transparency and accountability in voting practices, which requires jurisdictions to publicly disclose changes in voting procedures and collect data on the impact. I will just throw out there right now, as we talk about it, one of the action items here is to go out in the community, partner with organizations like the NAACP to get this act passed in Congress. All right. Also focusing on some of our current barriers, states continue this battle over voter ID laws. They continue this restrictive voter ID laws, and we know we've had this argument for a long time that the voter ID laws disproportionately affects Black and minority communities. It leads to potential challenges based on claims of discrimination and suppression. Another area of contention is gerrymandering, where district lines are drawn in ways to dilute minority voting power. And that's a huge thing because we are coming off the census. There are a lot of jurisdictions who are creating new boundary lines that essentially will affect voting rights. And we know that communities use this time to then sort of reshape how the voting process is within their communities and within those jurisdictions. We also look at legal battles over access to mail-in and early voting. That's been crucial for many Black voters, and that will also continue, especially in states seeking to restrict these options. Another thing maybe people don't think about very often, but technology. Technology has a significant impact in voters' rights because although advancements could be necessary, there is an issue with security and transparency. Thus, it opens up further issues regarding trust in the process. However, on the other side, there is a risk in disenfranchisement due to unequal access to the technology and the digital divide, which can impact minority communities. I'll also kind of throw in cybersecurity and hacking. We understand that this is an issue, which is very concerning. As we navigate more technology in this area, we really have to keep our eyes open for things like cybersecurity and hacking. Ensuring voting rights for all citizens has been a fight that many organizations, including the NAACP and communities, has been navigating for decades. Some of the ways that we can organize is advocating for the strengthening of federal oversight, especially in states that have a history of discrimination, and the passing of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which will be crucial in the years to come. We also, and this is a big one, especially now where we are in our election process, we need to take a close look at the composition of the Supreme Court, right? And you heard some of the significant impacts within some of the court cases that the outcomes that have come out of the court cases that has had a significant impact on Voting Rights Act. So we need to take a close look at the composition of the Supreme Court and the policy agenda of our presidential and congressional candidates. One of the things that we talk about, don't vote for the person. Take a strong look at the policies that they intend to implement. You have to understand that the upcoming election will have a significant impact on the composition of the Supreme Court, and that can completely reshape and redefine voting rights. So I strongly urge you to do your due diligence when selecting a candidate and vote. Please go out and vote during this election season. It is super, super, super important. I also urge you to join organizations like the NAACP and and other organizations similar, right, to help in your local area and support the protection of all voting rights. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you all being here today.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Executive Director Kess. I don't have any questions because you basically have covered it all. But I do want to ask you, if someone was interested in joining the NAACP, how would they do that? Because I'm going to also send everyone a link at the end. The Blue and Gold Democratic Club is based in Baltimore County. But we have members, as you know, that are throughout the region. So is there a place where they can join?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a universal place where you can join. You can go to the NAACP website, the national website, and you can select join, and then you would pay your fee, which is very minimal. So for 21 and the age 21 and over, it is only $30 a year. So I urge you all to join. For those who are younger than 21, the membership fee is $10. Okay, so it's not that much. So I would urge you to join your local branch. So there is an option for you to select that local branch. So if you're in Baltimore County, you would select the Baltimore County branch. Right? If you are in Baltimore City, as I am, you will select the Baltimore City branch. You can also join when you if you find go on the website, go on to the Google, right? Go on to Google and search your local branch. A lot of these branches have their own links where you can join that way as well. But I'll tell you, the most universal way is to go to the national website and join the NAACP, and we hope to see you there. And I hope to see you at our next convention because, as Ms. Huffman said, I am coming to you from Las Vegas from our national convention. And next year we will be in Charlotte. So I hope to see you at our next convention in Charlotte.
Okay, I'll be there. That's a road trip. Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, thank you so much. Well, you have given us a lot of information, and when I send this recording out to everyone who's registered, I'll make sure I send them the links. So thank you and
Thank
enjoy
you
Las
so much.
Vegas.
Yes, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.